Starting 101. First thing, you got to get a little organized. You got to read your seed packets. On the back of all your seed packets is going to have how many days to germination, how deep to plant them, when to plant them if you're going to plant them inside, which is what we're going to start doing. And some take longer, like 8 to 12 weeks, and some take less. Spinach, really quick. We're in zone 4B, 5A. That just means about the temperature ranges that we have here in Minnesota. It has nothing to do about when your last frost date is. Your last frost date is really important because if this says 8 to 12 weeks after your last frost date, that's what you go back by to know when you're going to start planting your seeds. And so those are information things you need to know before you start going, because don't be planting your tomatoes in January. They'll be 3 foot tall by the time you want to put them outside. So when you want to plant onion seeds, I know you have to start earlier. On the back here it says usually start indoors 8 to 12 weeks before you want to plant them in the ground, 1st through May 12th. So here is May 8th, 12th, something like there. So you want to go back how many, 8 to 12 weeks. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like we're talking about the middle of March, early March to start, and then it's going 9, 10, 11, 12. So February 7th or so is the earliest you want to start planting your onion seeds to get them ready to plant, say May 1st. You can always plant onions a little bit earlier than you would tomatoes. Get ready to plant your seeds. Make sure you do it all in one day, because when you do put the seeds in your containers, and we're talking about containers like this, or containers, even yogurt containers with holes in the bottom, or solo cups with holes in the bottom type of thing. That's what you're going to be putting your pre-moistened, soilless seed starting mix. You want something light and fluffy so that the seeds can poke through really, really easy. And matter of fact, you can buy this, which is organic cocoa coir, which is a renewable resource, and you add water to this in a tray, and it gets nice and fluffy. And some people add a little perlite, which is this white stuff here, to make it more fluffy and easier for the plant to drain and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep. And so you don't want to grab your soil from your container from last year. You don't want to grab topsoil. You want something that's light and fluffy. And once the seeds emerge, then you can start talking about fertilizer, but we won't talk about fertilizer yet. So when you get ready to start your seeds, you have to have everything ready. And you don't want to be putting this dry stuff into what you're going to be planting in, because if you fill your container with dry mix and then plant your seeds, then it's going to go down and compact like that, and you might lose your seeds and stuff like that. So what we want to do is pre-moisten the soil so that the seed is next to a nice moist medium, and then you top it off after you put your seeds in. But you're going to add, this is some water that we're going to use, and we're just going to add it, and you can mix it with that thing too.
Oh yeah.
And you want it so that it doesn't, you probably
See,
need,
there's drip
yeah,
there.
so you
but-
got to mix it a little bit
yeah.
better,
Yep.
you know? So you want it to hold together, but you don't want it to drip.
This is a good
Yeah, that's good.
consistency.
Okay, and then we're going to fill our little yogurt container.
Just lightly compact it. You don't want to push it in there too hard, because you'll make it harder for the seeds' roots to go through it.
But you want to get rid of all the air holes and stuff
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
And so I leave a little bit of top at this, a room at the top, so that you're going to add your seed and then maybe add a little more mix on top.
If you think about a seedling pushing through with its roots, it wants to have a kind of a light, fluffy mix, and that will make it easier for it to germinate without too much trouble, without having to push too hard.
But I also kind of make a little bit of a divot so that you can
Yes.
put a little bit of extra dirt on top of the seed once you have your seeds in their little spot.
There are a couple of different ways to plant seeds in these little containers, and as Becky said, you know, you can put them down so that there's room for a little bit more dirt, or you can use the end of a pencil, for instance.
The end of a pencil is a 1/4 inch, and many seeds call for a 1/4 inch depth, and so
Yes.
you're able to go like that with the seed and then just cover it up.
Just cover it up.
It works
Perfect.
out perfectly.
Yes.
Pencils. Or you take a dowel like from baking and you mark it off 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1 inch, and so you can do that too as far as how much depth you want.
And what you find on the back of a seed packet will tell you how deep to plant it. For instance, we're looking at this onion. The onion
And it says a 1/4 inch.
says a 1/4 inch, so it will tell you how deep to plant the seeds. And the other thing that's important to know, for instance, this is onions. Say you only wanted 6 onions. Make sure when you begin to put your seedlings in that you label what each little cell has got in it. Otherwise, you will not remember later. Now, you can use a lot of things also for labeling. You can use the plastic labels that you buy again at Menards or something. You can use a Sharpie marker to indicate there are onions in this tray. Sometimes you'll have a seed packet from the store that tells you all this information. Sometimes you just know it because you've grown the same kind of plant for years and years. Or say last year you had delicata squash. You had extra seeds, and so you saved them for yourself to use this year. Delicata squash they're a pretty big size seed. So because they're that big, they probably will have to be planted deeper than some seeds would.
A 1/2 inch to 1 inch, probably.
A 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Okay, so again, you want to use your little pencil as a dibbler, or this. This might be better because, yeah, so she is making room for these nice big fat seeds to go into these cells at just the perfect depth, about 1 inch.
Because there's my inch mark right there.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna drop that in.
Now, Marie, some people also will pre-moisten their seeds the night before to help it germinate faster, type of a thing, so that if they have moisture, they can like have a damp towel, roll them up in the damp towel, put it on the counter, plant it the next day or the next 2 days, and the moisture from that moistened towel will help germinate that seed faster than a plain old seed going in the ground.
That's very good to know. That's a good tip. Okay, so now you remember we have this soil pre-moistened. And because it's pre-moistened, you may not have to water for some seeds. Now these are bigger seeds. I would water that when we're all done planting this tray. And I would label this delicata squash.
You know, some other people also on the side will put a piece of tape and mark it on tape. And then depending upon if all 6 of them germinate, then you're good. If only 4 do it, then when you up-pot them, then you can make your tag at that point.
There you go. Yes, that's a very good suggestion. So that's basically all there is to it. You would water. What Becky is doing now is putting a little bit of vermiculite. It's horticultural vermiculite. You get it in a bag. You can get it at lots of different places, including Menards. And the vermiculite helps keep down the number of fungus gnats that you would have. Fungus gnats are not harmful to the seedlings. However, they are very annoying when they're in your house for any length of time. They kind of annoy you, and if you don't like slapping them and crushing them very much, they need moist soil to be able to lay their eggs. So if you put a little vermiculite over the top of it, they don't have that moist soil and they can't germinate their eggs.
The one thing with fungus gnats, overwatering is probably the biggest problem and the biggest thing that makes them grow more. You know?
Yes, that's right.
But I think this way of keeping the soil, there's a barrier there so the fungal gnats can't lay their eggs.
So tell me, Becky, when you check to see if that's ready to be watered, how do you do that?
I usually will lift up the bottom to see if there's any water in the bottom. If there's water in the bottom, it usually will wick it up if it needs to. Also, some people have a little meter that they can go in, and other people just take their finger and go right along the side where the seed isn't. And if it feels moist, you're good. If it feels dry, water.
Yes, and overwatering is the quickest way to kill a seedling. It can cause fungus problems, and so it's something you have to
Dampening off.
Damping off disease. Damping off disease is the seedling starts to come up, and you'll see right down by the ground, it'll turn black on the stem, and they fall over.
The whole seed dies.
It'll go right through your seed tray and wipe out your seedlings. So you really need to be careful not to overwater.
It's going to be a bunch of water in the bottom, and that means you have too much. So a lot of people will take this out, dump the extra water out, and then put their trays back in.
Underneath this tray, which has got dirt in it, there's another tray. And the water goes through this tray and ends up in the bottom tray. Okay, so when you water, seedlings are really easy to knock over. And so to avoid that, when you water the bottom. You water under here in the tray. You just pour water in there till it's about 1/4 inch deep. Put it down. Let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I usually check the water moisture again, as Becky did. You know, with my finger. You'll be able to tell it'll be really wet. You don't want it really wet. You want it so that you can tell there's moisture in this dirt.
Some people also leave one little square open, and that's where they water from, and that's when they can see the water go down. That's one easy way that a lot of people, especially with this small size,
that's a great tip.
Is
yes.
to water in that one. Usually it's in a corner type of thing. Make it easy on yourself. Days to germination, 7 to 14. So you have to be patient for 14 days. A lot of people also, when they make this little thing, they'll put the date that they put their seed in the cell so that they remember when is 2 weeks, when is 1 week, that kind of stuff.
That's a real good idea.
So that you, after maybe 2.5 weeks, you don't have anything. Well, maybe you got a bad batch of seed. Maybe you got an old batch of seed. Maybe it's seed left over from 5 years ago. Everything that you have for seed starting, like this one talks about packed for the season of 2019. So these are 2 years old. Usually spinach seeds are okay for 2 years old. Tomato seeds are usually good for 5 years. But onion seeds usually 1 year because they just don't germinate well after 1 year. But all this information is on your seed packet, and then it also says days to maturity, which is kind of nice when you're trying to figure out how long is it going to take for my spinach to get till I can eat it. You know?
Now, when you say days to maturity, what date are you measuring that from?
When you transplant your plant into the garden, that's days 1 or
That's
0.
day 0.
That's
okay.
day 0.
So
yeah.
if it says 75 days, you count from the day you plant it out in the garden.
Yep.
75 days. That's the soonest you would probably be harvesting it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And two, it depends if you're going to be planting in a bright sunshine, partial sunshine. Some stuff can grow in shade, like lettuces and spinach and stuff like that. They don't grow as fast, but they're still going to grow okay. But a tomato will not grow in the shade.
No, that's a fact.
That's a fact.
Okay.
And this is a waterproof heat mat, and you can be plugging it in after you put it down, and then this goes on top, and you don't have to worry about getting electrified if you have water on it and stuff like that. Just plug it in. And this is a very simple one. It does it to a certain temperature, usually 80, 85. I haven't invested the money in something that has a dial-in temperature thing.
You really don't need it.
No.
I mean, if you want to do it simply, this is a great way to do it.
If you don't have a heat mat, a lot of people will put their tomatoes or peppers above the refrigerator because at first you don't need them to have light. All they need is warmth and water and something to grow in. So you don't need a light right away, but they do need the heat. So a lot of people I know put their stuff on top of the refrigerator.
And it could be dark, like you said.
Or in the laundry room or someplace where it's warm.
And keep an eye on it. Typically when you have the dome on it, I found that you don't have to water it very often. This is a greenhouse. This is a little mini greenhouse right here. And what will happen is there'll be water all over on the inside of this plastic cover because it will go up, the water will come back down. The water goes up and it comes back down, which means you don't have to water it again probably until you start to see seedling emerge. in there. When you start to see the little green, you take the top off.
But don't do it on the very first one that comes up in that cell over there. Make
Yes.
sure there's at least 50 to 75% germination, and then take the top
Yes.
off. A lot of people also will take it half off for
Yeah.
one day, kind of to let them get used to a regular air thing, and realize that if it's on a heat mat, you're going to probably end up, when this comes off, watering more often or checking for water more often because it evaporates the water faster.
Correct.
So seeds do not need fertilizer until after they get their first true set of leaves. The first set of leaves are cotyledons, and those are from the seed. And then the second set of leaves come out are the true leaves, and then you can start doing a mild fertilizer. Until that point, everything that the seed needs is inside the seed, and you don't have to worry about it. Make sure that if you have a buddy that's growing maybe tomatoes and you're growing tomatoes and hers grew better than yours, and she's going to share type of stuff with it, because people usually don't need 12 tomatoes, they're happy with 1 or 2, you know. But you can share type of thing, you can share your successes, you can share what happens and goes wrong and learn from it, and you can always replant. You can always replant. Good luck.